Hey Explorers, Dr. Allen here. I'm coming to you to talk about a very important person, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are celebrating his birth on January 16th. That's a Monday, and that's a Monday that we're not in school. So I felt it was important that you know why you're not in school, since it's not a snow day and it's not, some other natural disaster event. But the reason is because we're celebrating his life and all of the work that he did. So if you did not know about him before now, I think you'll learn a lot of great information. To tell you more about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I wanted to take you through a presentation that was created originally by Krista Joy. She was a teacher here at East Clayton Elementary School for many years, and I always enjoyed working with her, and I'm excited to say we're still close friends. So she's given me permission to use this, and I'm telling you all this because it's very important that you give credit where credit is due, and it's also important that you get permission when somebody allows you to use something that they created. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Lived from 1929 to 1968. He was born on January 15th, which is why we celebrate him so close to his date of birth. And he grew up in a church, which helped him decide that he wanted to become a minister. He was married to Coretta Scott on June 18th, 1953. But the reason that we celebrate his life and he has a special day dedicated to him is because of his strong belief that all people were created equal, no matter what color their skin was. This was a passion of his. And if you think about when he was alive, this was a time where people were not treated as fairly just based on their skin tone. Things have definitely improved since then. But they're mostly based on all these things that Dr. Martin Luther King did, but also other civil rights activists like Rosa Parks, who you can see right here. She believed that you shouldn't be treated differently just because of the way that you looked, and she showed this by sitting at the front of the bus that she was taking home one day. And at that time, you weren't allowed to sit at the front of the bus if your skin wasn't white. I don't feel like that's very fair, and we don't treat people this way anymore, but this is the way that things used to be, and that's why Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks had to work to change some of these thoughts and beliefs, along with a lot of other civil rights activists. So Dr. King also organized sit-ins at restaurants to show that he believed everybody should be able to eat together. And the reason that a sit-in was so important, all these chairs that you're seeing right here, these men were not allowed to sit in these chairs and be served because they're not white. Again, not fair. And that's why they were working to change this, because they believed that they should be able to be fed where anybody else could. Dr. King became the leader of the civil rights movement. Civil rights just means your basic rights as a human. And we still have people fighting for different civil rights today. But the civil rights movement that Dr. King was a major part of dealt with race and the color of one's skin. He fought for equal rights for Black Americans or African Americans. And he made some great speeches. I'm actually going to leave off with part of his famous I Have a Dream speech at the very end of this lesson. Dr. King went to jail multiple times for what he believed in. And I think most of the time we think about jail as something that's not good and only bad people go to jail. But he was put in jail because he was fighting against something that was so normal for everyone. Everyone during that time, especially people who had older beliefs, felt like you weren't equal just based on the color of your skin, so they felt like he was wrong and he needed to be punished, and that's why he was sent to jail. Dr. King spoke to 250,000 civil rights supporters during the March on Washington, and if you can see, look at all of these people. Everybody is all crowded around just to hear him speak because he was such an influential, which means he influenced others. He did that in such a powerful way. He was very inspiring, and people really cared about what he had to say because they wanted people to be treated fairly as well. You're going to hear the famous "I Have a Dream" speech at the end of this, but that's his most famous speech. And there were a lot of people that didn't like what he had to say, and they threatened him, even in his home, as you can see with Dr. Martin Luther King pointing at the bullet hole in his window. But he didn't let this stop him. He continued, even though there were threats against him. In December of 1965, Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts because he was working towards a more peaceful America and a more peaceful world. Unfortunately, so many people felt strongly against him to the point that he was actually shot while standing on a balcony in Memphis, and he died on April 4th, 1968. The country and his family were extremely sad about his death. And you can see all the people who wanted to support his passing, or not his passing, but support his life at his funeral, and they wanted to be there to show that they really cared about him. President Ronald Reagan, that's who the president was at the time, signed a bill to make January 20th, or close to January 20th, as we celebrate it now, the celebration of Dr. King's birthday and a national holiday. So President Reagan is the person who started giving us that day off from school, more or less, because he created this as a holiday to honor Martin Luther King Jr. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. continues to make an impact in the life of people today. His speech continues to inspire people when they hear it, and that's why I want you to hear a little bit of it as well. He was a great man and influenced many through all the things that he did. He fought his entire life for people to be treated equally and fairly. Let's think about how we can continue his mission with treating everyone fairly and everyone equally. And sometimes those things don't, equal doesn't always mean, or fairness doesn't always mean equal, but it's important to treat everyone fair and justly, and you shouldn't discriminate on other people just because of things like the color of their skin or something that you believe to be true about them. And before we get into the speech, I want to share with each of you that this lesson is going to start the pattern of talking about culture and diversity. I think it's really important that we talk about this a little bit more, and in a future video I actually want to give you an activity that you can choose to do with your class if you'd like. But this is just the starting point of this conversation, because America has come a long way since Dr. Martin Luther King was such an influential figure, and we now are able to be anywhere that we want to be throughout the United States in public places, regardless of our skin color. Like, there's no signs anymore that say whites only, because that was one of the things that signs used to say a long time ago. So we've come a long way, but there's always room for growth. So we'll continue to talk about stereotypes and what that word means and your culture and how it's so important to you, but that will be in future lessons. So in the meantime, have a moment to really reflect on how influential Dr. Martin Luther King was, and I think you'll appreciate this portion of his speech.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
All right, explorers, that's where I'm going to leave you for now. And if you have a moment, I hope you can talk as a class about what that last quote means that he said. He hopes that his children would be judged based on their character, the content of their character, instead of the color of their skin. That's a really great quote. I hope you can all work through that and really digest this information together. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you soon.